There's an ancient belief that trees and humans are bound by the same lifeblood. Our veins are the roots, our limbs the branches, and the earth, the great connector beneath us all. I've always felt this in my bones, as if the ground hums with a quiet song, linking me to something far older than I could ever comprehend. My roots, though unseen, run deep and far, stretching across the sea to Ireland, where the winds whisper of forgotten stories and the land holds the weight of history. I feel it, always. If my soul had a season, it would be autumn, when the world seems to slow and the air becomes crisp with the scent of change. The trees shed their leaves like whispered secrets, and everything feels closer to the edge of something hidden, waiting just beyond sight. Samhain has always been my time, the night when the veil between the worlds thins, so fragile you could almost see through it. As I stand by the window of a cottage in my ancestral home, long after the sun has slipped behind the hills, I imagine the sky as a great picture window. Beyond it, the veil billows like sheer curtains caught in the wind, brushing against the edges of this world, revealing glimpses of another. A world where the past still walks and the spirits of the dead tread softly, calling to those who will listen. It's a pull I feel in my very marrow, as though my ancestors' voices echo on the breeze, carried through the ages by the land itself. And tonight, as the fire crackles low and the shadows deepen, I know something stirs just beyond the thin line that separates us from the other side. Samhain is here, and with it, the dead return. I came to Ireland seeking inspiration, something to wake the tired soul of my writing. The stories of the fairy folk, the good people, had always fascinated me, especially the tales my grandmother would tell of benign fairies and dangerous spirits alike. She would warn me, never disturb a fairy ring, never accept a gift left at the door, and above all, never go out at night on Samhain. I thought they were old wives' tales, comforting in their own way, but now I wonder if they were warnings I should have heeded. That night, the fire was burning low, casting flickering shadows on the cottage walls. I was alone, yet the house didn't feel empty. There was a presence, something lingering just at the edge of my awareness. The air had grown cold, but it wasn't the kind of cold that came from an open window. This was a deeper chill, one that settled into my bones and stirred something primal within me. Outside, the wind howled, and I swear I heard voices carried in the gusts, whispers, soft and indistinct, like the murmuring of a crowd. My heart raced. I was afraid, though I couldn't say why. Perhaps it was the weight of the night, the knowledge that Samhain was upon us, the time when the dead walked. Or perhaps it was something more. I stepped outside, the cold air biting at my skin. The sky above was dark, the moon hidden behind clouds. The world felt muted, like I was walking in a dream. I wandered through the fields behind the cottage, drawn by some invisible force. The wind grew stronger, tugging at my clothes, urging me forward. I stood in the darkness, the air sharp with the cold bite of Samhain, as I made my way through the fields toward Owainagat Cave, the Cave of Cats, the locals called it, the ancient place known as the birthplace of this sacred night. The land around me seemed to hold its breath, as though the earth itself was waiting for something to stir. My heart pounded with a mix of fear and anticipation, the whispered echoes of old stories filling my mind. This would become my ritual. Every year on this night, I would slip away, drawn by something deep and ancient, something I could never fully explain. It was as if the past called me to witness what should have remained hidden. The mouth of the cave loomed ahead, a jagged wound in the earth, half swallowed by creeping ivy and twisted roots. The wind seemed to change as I approached, growing colder, sharper, almost like a warning. But I couldn't turn back. I had come too far. I crouched behind a twisted oak, half hidden by the shadows, eyes fixed on the entrance of the cave. For a long, terrible moment, nothing stirred, only the night itself stretching out, heavy with the weight of the unseen. Then it happened. From deep within the blackness of the cave, a low rumble began to rise, a sound like the earth itself shifting, like the bones of the land grinding together. My breath caught in my throat as the noise grew louder, more insistent, echoing off the ancient stones. The ground beneath me seemed to tremble. Then, out of the abyss, a shape began to emerge, massive, dark, and terrible. A chariot pulled by creatures that couldn't be of this world. Their eyes burned red, glowing in the night like embers, and their breath came in thick plumes of mist that curled and twisted in the cold air. The beasts, if they could even be called that, moved with a strange, unnatural grace, their bodies too large, too twisted, like something out of a nightmare. And there, standing tall upon the chariot, was a figure cloaked in black. The Morrigan. Her presence filled the night with an oppressive weight, her dark eyes gleaming beneath a wild tangle of black hair that seemed to move like shadows themselves. She held the reins with skeletal hands, guiding the monstrous beasts with an ease that sent chills down my spine. Her cloak, black as midnight, billowed behind her like the wings of a great raven. The wind seemed to howl with her arrival, a mournful, deathly sound that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. She was everything the old stories had warned: ancient, wrathful, a force of nature herself. Her chariot wheels crushed the earth beneath them, leaving deep gouges in the soil, as though even the land recoiled from her presence. The air crackled with a strange energy, a thickening of the atmosphere, as if the very boundary between worlds was unraveling before my eyes. The Morrigan's gaze swept the horizon, cold and calculating, and wherever she looked, the trees withered, the grasses shriveled, and the very life seemed to drain from the landscape. Her beasts snorted and stamped, their hooves sinking deep into the earth as they waited for her signal to ravage the land, to strip it bare for the coming winter. I watched, frozen, too terrified to move, as she raised her hand to the sky, the gesture slow and deliberate. The wind howled louder, and the very air seemed to shudder in her presence. In that moment, I knew I was witnessing something not meant for mortal eyes, something ancient and terrible, a goddess in her full fury. The ground around the cave began to shift and crack as if the land were reacting to her power. Stones rolled down from the hilltop, and the trees groaned under the weight of some invisible force, bending unnaturally toward her, as though they, too, were surrendering to her will. The cold deepened, biting into my skin, and the wind swirled with whispers, voices from the past, from beyond. Then, without warning, the Morrigan turned her head in my direction, her gaze locking onto me with an intensity that stole the breath from my lungs. For a heartbeat, I thought she had seen me, that she knew I was there, watching from the shadows. But she didn't stop. Instead, her chariot began to move, slowly at first, then faster, the beasts tearing through the landscape with a ferocity that shook the ground. She was leaving, driving her chariot into the night, her dark purpose already in motion. The wind whipped the dying leaves into the air as she disappeared into the distance, leaving behind a trail of devastation in her wake. I exhaled shakily, realizing I had been holding my breath. The land was silent once more, but the mark of her passing was everywhere. The trees bent low, the grass flattened, the earth scarred. The Morrigan had come, and with her, she had brought the cold, unyielding grasp of winter. I stumbled backward, my legs weak beneath me, and for a moment, I thought of all the stories I'd heard, the warnings about Samhain, about witnessing things that no living soul should see. But I had seen her, and I would never be the same. I tried to speak, but no words came. My throat was dry, my voice stolen by the fear that gripped me, and I realized my body had gone cold. The life was draining out of me, my limbs heavy, my vision fading. In that moment, I knew I could no longer exist in the world of the living. Now I linger in this place, caught between worlds, a whisper on the wind, a shadow in the corner of your eye. The dead walk on Samhain, and I walk with them. I sought inspiration and found it, more than I ever wanted. If you ever come to Ireland on a night like this, when the wind howls and the trees sway like they're alive, heed my warning. Stay inside, away from the stones and the fairy rings. Don't listen to the voices on the wind, and whatever you do, don't follow them. Samhain is here, and with it, the dead return. And now, I walk among them.